All right. Well, in my opinion, Total War Warhammer 3 is one of the best games ever made, let alone best fantasy RTS games ever made. And with such an incredible game, and I've got about 6,000 hours in it, I've come up with strategies that definitely help along the way. Now, I'm sure that there's all kinds of amazing players out there with all kinds of different strategies, but these are some pretty common and or some techniques I've learned along the way that seriously help your game, as this is a very challenging and at times extraordinarily frustrating game because you are quite literally dealing with the grand strategy that has never been fleshed out in such a manner in the fantasy swords and sorcery conquering ways. Now, the first is a very self-explanatory technique. It's the way the maps are laid out. It's called the corner camp. It's basically assembling your units so you're completely up against the back corner. And this is a technique that has been in many Total War games and used throughout the ages, but it's extraordinarily effective in Total War Warhammer. Now, sometimes you won't even be able to use a corner camp. Sometimes you truly can't even back your units up, whether it be forest cover or just the layout of the map. But if it's usable, you're going to want a corner camp every single time because it can help you because it allows you to put your back up against the wall. Now, a downside of corner camps is if there's tons of spells can rain down on you, it can bunch your units up and it can lock you into a corner and it can make you extremely vulnerable to certain armies. So keep that in mind when doing the corner camp. But especially if there's lots of cavalry on the other side, you're going to want a corner camp because nothing can get you from behind if you do an effective corner camping technique. Next is a technique that for more less patient players is tough to master. Is a very, very effective technique called mopping up. Now, after battle ends, it's easy enough just to hit the end battle button and go on with your campaign. But for me, what you want to do is you want to take out as many units as you possibly can. So what you want to really do is you want to make it so that units can, kill as many of the enemy forces as they can, because oftentimes after an army is defeated, they'll back away, recoup, and come back at you again. So you want to take out as much as you can. Now, a big downside of this is you got to be careful because some of your weaker units can actually be killed by your incoming fire if you're not careful. So you can lose units after the battle has ended by your own or uh, ranged or artillery or even spell fire. So that's something to keep in mind. But essentially, you can end up doing tons more damage to enemy forces after the battle ends by just simply mopping up what's left, especially the weakest of the units and heroes, because you want to take out those heroes that aren't immortal before they run away and get stronger. Now, the next one is essentially something that I think should have been in the game uh, to begin with. It's a type of mod called AI General. Now, what this mod does is it allows you to just relinquish control of your units to the AI. Sometimes this doesn't work out at all, and I would highly recommend against it because the AI definitely sometimes can make choices that are worse than the player. But sometimes there's just so many complex movements, so much micromanagement that it's almost a better idea to just let the AI take control and take over, beating down what's left of. It's most effective when you basically are taking and using just there's a ton of weak units left. There's not really much left for you to worry about strategy wise. You just simply want all your units attacking all that's left of the enemy units. And in this case, the mod AI General is very, very effective. And you can just hit, I think it's Shift F9, and it just allows them to just kind of just go and just take out whatever forces are left on that. And it's a really effective mod. And maybe it's there's a way of doing it, but in the base game, but it should be should be a way for you to do it because it's really effective sometimes, but it can screw you if you are not careful with it because the AI will often make decisions that are to the detriment of your forces if you're too reckless with the AI general tool. The next technique is a kind of a more grand campaign, world map style diplomacy type situation. One of the greatest strengths you have in Total War Warhammer for your empire is your allies. So you always want to keep an eye on your allies, and you always want to make your allies a priority. Now, I'm sure many multiplayer games, when people are playing against each other or with each other or in an all-out battle, it's every man for himself. Take every settlement, conquer the world. It's yours to take. But in reality, and particularly a lot, in when you're struggling or when you're in the middle of a massive war, what you really want to do is prop up your allies as much as you can. Get those defensive alliances, get an alliance of good, get an alliance of evil, because they're going to help you a lot more than you think. And there's many different ways you can do to prop up your allies and make your allies stronger. Number one, if they're struggling, conquer settlements and then trade that settlements back to the your allies, so you give them more strength. You give them more territory, and one of the things that will happen is they'll have more recruitment options, they'll have more economy. Remember, all of Total War Warhammer is dictated just the same rules as you use. So if they have more territory, they're able to recruit more units, they're able to get bigger forces, they're able to help you in your wars. So always prop your allies up. Even give them gold if they're really struggling or you have tons and they have nothing. You want to build those strong alliances because if it's every man for himself and you're just conquering territories and allowing your allies to flounder, you're gonna feel that you have everything to hold on your back. So propping up your allies, giving them territory if they've lost it, giving them territory if you think it'll make them stronger, always works. The next one I call the pullback method. Now, oftentimes you'll have your archers kind of and ranged all caught up in melee skirmishes happening around them, and they won't fire very effectively. And the AI really seems to kind of have a decision of having to go in and fight what's close to them. So what you want to do is whenever your archers in range are kind of bunched up and can't get shots off, they're usually much more effective just to take them, move them back just a little bit so that they can start firing again if the enemy melee gets too close. And you always want to have a line of fire. So you always want to kind of keep an eye on how you can move your units back just enough so that they can start firing again and have a good line of sight to pound the enemy. Because yeah, one of the worst things that can happen is that you have this line of fire and then all of the enemy units are storming your units, and then all of a sudden you can't fire because they're all caught up in melee. It's one of the worst things ever. It's obviously way harder when cavalry is involved because they often will just come at you and swarm around you, and creatures will break through your lines and not allow you to get effective shots. But even with big monsters, if you do a little bit of backtracking, they'll just move back enough so that they're ready to fire, and then they'll just start picking off bigger monsters and melee. So, but yeah, backtracking works really good. Just simply moving them back a little bit if they start to get tied up, and then reforming those lines to refire. It's especially effective with gunners, gunner units because they're allowed to just quickly hit a volley off. The next is a method that really helps you early on in the game, and it's something that you want to do as much as possible, and that's what I call cheap shots. And what you want to do with cheap shots is any way you can hit the enemy safely, anything you can do to break them down early on, whether it mounted cavalry, ranged, whether it's artillery fire, whether it's spells. Spells are particularly effective, although the AI is extremely effective now with the modern Total War Warhammer 3 AI at dodging these techniques. You want to just go in and just pound the enemy as much as you can and break them down, especially when it's a super strong army. And I've had battles where I've actually taken and won battles, even decisive defeats, just simply by ripping them apart with spells, taking them down with spells. Remember, spellcasters are sometimes some of your strongest, most ways to flip a battle ever. If you can just slaughter their enemies with spells, you'll end up just being able to fight them off down into the future. So yeah, I mean, anything you can do damage wise, anything you can do to break down their forces, hinder them, hurt them, early on, take out artillery, take out heroes, take out powerful units. You want to do early on before all the enemy forces reach your forces, so that you can sway the battle in your favor. So yeah, cheap shots, extremely effective technique, and I'd highly recommend trying to do that, and it can sway the battle greatly in your favor. For people starting out, they may not be familiar with some of the different factions, how they play, how they fight in Total War Warhammer. For me, playing as long as I have and going through every update and every DLC, I've come to know every single faction like the back of my hand. And as much as I love Total War Warhammer and think it's the greatest game ever conceived by man, it is so not balanced. And I love all the races and factions, and I love what they did to Chaos, because Chaos used to be way weaker. But some factions are just so unbelievably overpowered, especially when you're up against them, that depending on who you are versus them, that you're going to struggle against them every time. So a very important strategy is knowing your factions, knowing who you're fighting, knowing who you're up against. Armies like Zinch, armies like Chaos Dwarves, armies like Ogres are devastating to fight, and you're going to have to counter what they have. Ogres, you want pike infantry. Um, Chaos Dwarves, your magic is usually useless against them. And Zinch is just one of the most awful armies to fight ever. Also, Termagant, man, some of the Nurgle factions are just almost unbeatable in combat. So a lot of these factions, you almost don't even want to fight in battles because they're going to beat you every time, even on Pyrrhic victories. So know your factions, know what you can beat, know the great powers, avoid them when you can, and fight them when you need to. So a very important strategy in this great game of fantasy worlds and powers and struggles, as unbelievably unbalanced as it is at times. I'm sure raging, seething players across the globe, going up against a Zinch player or going up against a Chorf player, are gonna throw the keyboard, when they get stomped by them. Know your factions. Know that they are some of the stronger units. Know the lesser races. Know the higher races. Know their weaknesses. Know their strengths. You know, uh, the, the more you know about your enemy, the more you will succeed against them. And if Chorfs have Dreadquakes, just don't fight them. And oftentimes with Zinch, just don't fight them. They are so impossibly strong. They can be beaten, but compared to just a baseline Empire army, you're going to struggle every single time against these higher factions. Like I said before, and what is pretty self-explanatory, is that unlike other Total War games and many other strategy games, Total War Warhammer is very, very, very evident that magic is a power in the world. And it's true that magic is probably the biggest decider in many of your battles. And sometimes a magic user can mean the difference between winning a decisive defeat and, not. So, I mean, magic is something you need to master, and magic is something you really need to get. Get those heroes with magic, get those sorcerers. Always put your heroes' spell points towards spells. I will always do that. I will always give myself all the spells I can, damage dealing spells, area of effect spells, blasts, anything that I can do, because sometimes like um, even a weak hero with those spells can transform a battle if used right. So you want to focus on magic. You always want powerful magic users. Magic users are some of the strongest units in the entire game, and if it's a strong, powerful hero along with magic, magic can crush your enemies. And especially when they all group up, it'll just mean the difference between winning and losing a battle, oftentimes. When things get messy, it's harder, obviously, to use magic. But if you're really, good with your magics, you can transform a battle. You can win battles. Use debuffs. If things are getting tough, even when they're not tough, debuff anything you can. Buff anything you can. Just spam that magic. Use the magic. Magic is to be used and magic is to be mastered, because you're extremely powerful if you start to get powerful magic users. And some of the magic users are just god tier in this game, so you need to know your magics. It's easy to just get warriors, but you need to have your magics. You need to use them. Keep an eye on your spells. It's almost like Magic the Gathering, the game. I remember back in the day, it's like you gotta master the stats and the abilities of your heroes. Magic is an integral part of mastery in this game. So yeah, I mean, a technique in itself is magic. When a battle is beginning and starting, it's really easy to try and want to take out enemy heroes, commanders, leaders. But some of the melee damaging units and some of the heroes in general are just so impossible to take out no matter what you got, that it's often impossible to take out. Characters like Sigvald, Archeon, they're just like you're never gonna take them out off the bat. So just hold back. Obviously, want to take out spellcasters if you can, but units that are powerful melee, you sometimes just don't want to just completely ignore. Take out his forces first, and he will crumble. Because many of the powerful legendary lords you won't even be able to defeat. And if you concentrate all your fire, all your attacks on that unit that disrupts your lines, it could be your massive downfall for you. So sometimes it's best just to ignore powerful units, because you're never going to take them out in time. Conquer their forces first, and then they'll subside, and you'll be able to focus everything on them. Because if you draw all your fire on a powerful hero or a melee unit, sometimes even the heroes are nearly impossible to take on before everything else comes into play. So sometimes it's best just to completely ignore powerful melee units. But obviously, you want to go for spellcasters if you can, because they're just going to hurt you harder. But oftentimes, the powerful, just strictly melee combat units are way tougher, and they're way harder to kill. So it's best just to ignore them till later on in the battle when there's less enemy forces. This is a technique that I kind of, for a long time didn't pay as much attention to. It's easy to just get stuck with your same units, but sometimes it's the art of letting go that makes you stronger. So what you need to do is, sometimes if you've been holding on to the same lower tier units, just get rid of them, cycle them out for stronger units, move up the ladder to the higher tiers, and then you want to have like the highest tier units you can. So it's pretty basic technique and pretty standard. But yeah, getting rid of the weaker units are good. They're just gonna hurt you, especially with Bretonia. I mean, obviously, Bretonian peasants are virtually useless to even have in your armies at first place. But lower tier Bretonian units, the first thing you want to do is just get rid of them. Weaker units will weaken you in battle. And even if they're at higher ranks, just kick them. Just get rid of them. Cycle them out for stronger units. And don't even bother sometimes keeping some of the weakest of units. If you recognize that there's a unit in your roster that's super ineffective, like some of the flyers and stuff, like bats and whatnot, just get rid of them entirely. Don't use them. Things like zombies, Bretonian units, just don't even bother using them because they're gonna hurt you in general, and they're almost like a negative for your armies because they're so weak. So yeah, get rid of the weaker units, cycle them out for stronger units. All right, well yeah, that's 10 basic techniques that I've just kind of learned help me along the way with Total War Warhammer. It's such a game that is it's impossible to master and very difficult to learn. So I would imagine there are players out there who are just completely flabbergasted when they start playing this game with all the numbers and things. But I mean, this is a game of grand strategy, and there's many different techniques. You know, obviously things like lightning strike. You want to get that. That helps you sometime. Forming your stacks. If you have a 20 stack on its own, it's much more weaker than 420 stacks altogether. So form up your 20 stacks when you're in a big war. Keep your guys as strong as you can. Keep them all together. Forming your empires, making it so you take advantage of most of the techniques. I mean, obviously, the more you play a faction, the more you'll get used to it. But learning those techniques when you play a new faction and trying to use them to your advantage, sometimes they can even work to a disadvantage. An example is with um, vampires, who sometimes it seems like you can get caught up summoning too many of weak units and then your armies just become too weak. But, you know, to each faction is its own. It has advantages and disadvantages to use their things, and keeping an eye on those rebellions, stamping out rebellions whenever you can, building anti-rebellion buildings. Those are all pretty basic stuff, pretty good gameplay techniques in the first place, and just learning your factions and learning that sometimes battles are extremely hard, and I whoever would get used to using the slow mo or that, it's a good idea to try and sometimes not use the slow mo as much because sometimes it can actually hinder you. So yeah, I know sometimes there's just a bunch of different techniques to use, and yeah, I mean there's a million different techniques I could probably give in this video, but these are some of the ones that has worked for me.